1784. Spanish Louisiana is not doing well. The territory had been owned by Spain for 22 years up to this point, being awarded to them by the Kingdom of France in order to avoid it falling into the hands of the British following the French defeat during the 7 Years' War. Louisiana was an exotic place, and it attracted a large number of Spanish families to immigrate there from all corners of the Spanish Empire, and it also increased the Spanish slave trade. However, its economy was suffering. It heavily relied on paper currency, which, backed by no silver or gold, made it completely worthless. Fearing the colony's imminent financial ruin, King Carlos III of Spain ordered the El Cazador to neighboring Veracruz to pick up a large shipment of silver. We now know from records there was about 400,000 coins loaded onto the ship, with an additional 50,000 silver reales loaded onto the ship as well. Many of these coins were brand new, and they were meant to revitalize the Louisianan economy. Once loaded, the ship left Veracruz, its destination, New Orleans. The ship would never make it. It encountered a violent storm in the Gulf of Mexico, and its crew and cargo were lost. Despite this setback, Spain continued to rule Louisiana until Napoleon, through a series of treaties, strong-armed Charles IV into giving Louisiana back, and he eventually sold it to the U.S. Despite the Spanish authorities' best efforts to locate the wreck, the El Cazador and her crew were officially lost. Slowly, over time, the ship faded from living memory. 209 years later, fishermen by the name of Jerry Murphy on his boat, the Mistake, were fishing in the Gulf of Mexico, near New Orleans. Jerry snagged something and thought at first he had caught a rock or a coral reef. When he pulled his net up, he discovered a handful of silver coins. Jerry had discovered the wreck of the El Cazador, which had been sitting near New Orleans for more than 209 years. It was titled The Coin That Changed the World. And here we are today. Since the wreck of the El Cazador has been found, there's been a huge conservation effort to recover as many coins as possible, and of course, many are in either good or bad condition. It really depends on what type you get. As you can see, this one on the back is in excellent condition, but you can still see some of the decay that happened. Unfortunately, salt water does not meld well with silver, and it often blackens the coins, as you saw in pictures earlier. Here's a comparison of what the coin looked like, and the portrait featured is Charles III of Spain. Now, Charles III ruled Spain from 1759 up until 1788, when he died. He's a pretty famous king in Spain, as he briefly revitalized Spain as a superpower, and basically his efforts benefited the Spanish greatly. Unfortunately, a lot of his work was undone after he died, but that's a story for another time. Now, I should mention that these coins were relatively new when they sunk in the El Cazador, most having the date 1783. However, there have been some found in the wreck that are even older than that. Of course, it can be assumed that they were just trying to relieve themselves of older silver coins so they could make newer ones. Now, these coins were likely produced from the Veracruz mint, as most of the Spanish reales came from that mint, along with the Peruvian mint and Bolivian mint being the biggest producers of silver. Even today, Mexico is one of the biggest producers of silver. Now, moving on from talking from silver, I'm going to bring even more silver. Unfortunately, I do not have a Carlos III coin to compare that is in relatively good shape, so I'm going to do the next best thing, his disappointment of a son, Charles IV. Now, as you can see, both portraits are very different. Charles had a notoriously big nose. His son has a odd face. As you can see, mine is worn down, whereas Charles IV's coin is relatively in good shape. It's only a bit faded. The coat of arms is pretty much the same thing. It seems in the 20 years these coins were made apart, relatively it was the same ordeal. Very little change. I do want to mention that the coins are in Latin, as that was a custom at the time. Most of, if not all of European coins were written in Latin at this point. Also, I want to mention that this one has significantly decayed to the point where the corners are not as potent as they once were. They most likely look like this, as a good example. And yeah, just different coins altogether, but somewhat similar in a way. Now moving on, we have a coin from Philip V of Spain, and we have a actual Charles III coin that has been worn down and was at one point a necklace or medallion. As you can see, this one is beyond faded. It was heavily worn down, and the shipwreck coin is actually in still really good shape on the back of the coat of arms. You can still make out Spain's coat of arms relatively well. I'm not sure when the clipping occurred, whether or not that was when it was recovered or that was how it was shipped to Louisiana. It seems that it was relatively recent, as it has just this weird... It's almost like when you break something and you can see that it's recent. It has that weird texture. But this coat of arms is just in excellent shape, and truly, the coin survived the test of time. Now again, comparing the two, relatively speaking, the shipwreck coin, in terms of quality, is actually pretty good. You can still make out Charles III's image. I'm sorry if I keep switching from Charles III to Carlos III. It's very confusing as it's written in Latin and in Spanish, but hope you can forgive me for that. But yes, relatively good shape overall. Now before I go, I'd just like to mention pricing when it comes to shipwreck coins. Of course, these coins are already expensive on their own as is, but being shipwreck coins increases their value, and if they're graded or have a certificate of authenticity, their price generally demands a lot higher. Of course, you may get one similar to this. There's very many variants of this El Cazador plastic cover with a coin included, but there may be many other variations. Of course, generally speaking, this coin goes for at least 100, as it's a shipwreck coin, but some that are in way better shape go for even higher than that, in the 200s to even 600 range. Of course, you can find extremely good deals, like find some of these shipwreck coins for as low as 60, but you have to remember the Spanish silver reales already itself is an expensive coin due to the fact it's made out of silver, which is a commodity that goes up and down every year. Now, of course, you can find deals, and if you're patient, you can find amazing deals for amazing prices, but generally speaking, it's just really amazing to own something from a voyage that never made it to its destination. We have to remember that this was a ship that was intended to revitalize Spanish Louisiana, but it met its unfortunate doom in the Gulf of Mexico, only 50 miles away from the coast. And that's just really an incredible story to think about. These coins sat in the ocean for 209 years, and I'm sure most people had forgotten about the voyage long ago. But it's insane to me to think that I can own such a piece of history from so long ago. And it's just something I can't describe. It's a weird feeling. It honestly feels like a privilege to own such unique pieces of history. I mean, without these coins, Louisiana could have remained Spanish and possibly be in Mexico. It's hard to say what would have happened if they had reached the Spanish colony there, but they never did, and as a result, Spanish Louisiana was lost. Now, I'm going to end the video with photos of the coins being recovered. I'm the Costa Rican gentleman, and you have a wonderful night.